So our company actually started about 10 years ago. We launched a platform called DealCheck, which some of you may be familiar with. DealCheck started very small, but it quickly grew to probably the most widely used, or among the top three widely used property analysis and investment property kind of finder platforms in the US. So it's been a wild ride, a lot of growth, a lot of learning, but that's kind of how we got started. And as part of building DealCheck, obviously we realized that there's a strong need for high quality property data for not just larger firms, enterprise firms, but for smaller startups, for individuals, for just kind of indie hackers looking to build their next project. And we've went probably through about a dozen different data vendors as part of building this platform, realized that, you know what, they're either just prohibitively expensive or their data quality is just not up to par. And some time ago, we decided to start sourcing a lot of our own data in-house for use by our own platforms. And then eventually we launched what now became the RentCast API platform that provides a variety of property and rental data for startups. And just like Ariel said, right from the beginning, our focus has always been not just to provide a very high quality product and actual accurate real-time data, pretty much a full spectrum that we could acquire and develop, but also provide it at an extremely competitive cost, offer a variety of plans, and make it a very developer friendly and kind of self-serve experience, unlike some of the other bigger data vendors like Atom or CoreLogic, where you're paying thousands of dollars a month just from the beginning. You're signing contracts. Like, we didn't want any of that because we're devs ourselves. We went through all of this. We understand kind of the pain points. So that's kind of a brief history. Today, the RentCast API is probably used by over 5,000 different clients, ranging from both, your property tech startups, small firms, AI tools, to some Fortune 1000 companies that also switch to our data over the years, mainly for quality, pricing, kind of ease of use. The data sets we provide, it's fairly comprehensive. I'll kind of go over them briefly, and then I'm happy to answer any questions after that. So we provide property record data. This is fairly standard county sourced, data for pretty much every home in the US, over 140 million records in our database, including structural attributes, tax assessment data, property features, property attributes, sale transactions, owner data. Our next data sets that are getting somewhat more unique, we provide AVMs, nationwide sale and rental AVMs. So if you would like to know what is a property worth, in terms of value or in terms of rent, if it was to be rented out, we provide our own in-house AVM formula that we kind of use our other data sources to feed a little bit of machine learning AI algorithm that calculates the most probable value and rent of a property given its address. We also provide comparable properties, so you can actually see like rental comps or sales comps, and not just kind of like a black box estimate through these API endpoints. We provide nationwide sale and rental listing data. This data is fairly hard to acquire, mainly because of MLS restrictions. We provide basically your standard listing attributes like listed prices, rents, days on market, current listing status, agent details, so you can perform a variety of search queries for all homes listed for sale in a certain area, historical data, rental listings, and so forth. And our last kind of major data set, we call this real estate kind of trends and market statistics. So if you are more interested in, hey, where have the price trends in a certain area trended over the last 2 years, or where have the average rents, been in a certain zip code or property type, we basically kind of look at our listing and other data sources that we compile on the daily basis and take monthly snapshots of that data and pre-calculate a lot of averages, statistics, and other kind of days on market information that is useful specifically for more general market analysis. So not just on the property level, but if you'd like to see where things have gone in an area as a whole through our market statistics. And yeah, like I mentioned, we've built our API platform, from the ground up to be very developer friendly. Again, there's no contracts, there's no time commitments. All of our billing is month to month, so you can upgrade, downgrade, pause, start your subscription on a monthly basis. You're never locked in at a certain rate. We offer tons of guides. Our documentation is very comprehensive. I know Ariel mentioned a few AI tools. We just released a bunch of new AI integrations, including our own MCP server that actually can plug in right into Cursor with 4 lines of code right into Claude AI and other AI agents. You can actually integrate our API with modern tech stacks, modern tools, probably in a minute or so. Mainly just setting up your account and stuff like that. Or you obviously can use it in your own code. If you're more like me, you're an older dev who started before the AI, before any of that stuff. You just want to write it manually. We have guides, code samples, other resources to help you. Live chat support 7 days a week. Uh, but again, we'll kind of leave you alone, so there's no account manager, nobody cracking the whip on you to finish your integration. You're welcome to work on this on your own time, at any time. Pricing wise, like Ariel mentioned, we try to be pretty much as low cost as possible. Obviously, we have data for over 140 million properties. As you can imagine, it's a big operation interfacing with over 3,000 counties, listing sources, market trends. So, obviously that there is quite a big overhead for us. So we can't make it totally free, but we try to make it as low cost as possible. One thing that differentiates us from a lot of other vendors, we don't bill by record. A lot of property data vendors will say like, well, if you want data for, let's say 100,000 properties, that they bill you for that for 100,000. We only actually count the number of API requests you make. It doesn't matter whether you're making our bulk queries or bulk searches. You're getting a ton of data back. That still only counts pretty much as one request for billing purposes. And we have a very granular kind of plans that cater both to pretty much like hobby or indie hackers, as I call them. With our free plan, includes 50 requests free of charge each month, small overage fee for additional requests. And then for small businesses that just making a few hundred or thousand API requests, all the way into the hundreds of thousands or millions through our enterprise pricing. So obviously our cost, the cost per request gets significantly cheaper. The more requests you use, the higher the plan you pay. But if you compare our pricing to like Atom or CoreLogic or other major API data vendors, you'll probably find us like a magnitude or sometimes even more cheaper for the same data with high quality than those providers. So this is by design. This is we kind of like this niche. We probably could charge a lot more, but being our property tech founders ourselves, we kind of felt like there should be a platform that provides real-time data for people working on AI agents, apps, property tech tools, that actually is accessible without you having to, raise capital or fork over thousands of your own bootstrap capital just to have data to power your app, right? We'd rather kind of start you off at our smaller plans and then provide different pricing options as your app or user base grows. So we're happy with that. So I mentioned our API docs. We have a whole portal. There's too much information kind of to cover, but basically there's tons of guides for getting started, creating your account, managing billing. Again, this is kind of very self-serve. You don't need us to do this for you, so everything's transparent. You will get access to your own API dashboard. This will be personalized with how many requests you're making, what's your latencies, so you can monitor your usage. For example, don't go over your plan's limit, control costs. That's obviously important. You can manage your own API keys. You can manage the billing, as I mentioned. You can swap plans. You can pause your subscription. You can, cancel it for a few months, then restart, or swap plans depending if you have seasonality or some variance in your usage at any time. So it's kind of a modern UI, and a lot of the vendors, they'll kind of send you like a PDF to fill out or something like that, where you have to put your billing information. We did it full self-serve, so you always have access to your billing, your API keys, your security, your kind of number of requests. And yeah, our API docs kind of cover everything else pretty much. It's a full reference of all of our available data sets with examples, with guides on, for example, how to do bulk queries, how to do pagination for large data searches, types of properties we support, response code, rate limits, and then kind of diving into each of our data sets like property record data. There'll be a full reference of every JSON response field that these endpoints provide, where we source the data, how often we update it, kind of links to other guides, specific use cases like retrieving sold properties or sold comparables, for example. And we even have like a built-in, we call this API playground directly into our doc portal. So you can just paste your API key right at the top after creating your account, and can actually click this try it button and make API requests directly in the browser, without leaving the page. So you don't even have to write any code to test our API, to test our search queries. We expose all of the query parameters and everything that we support, provide examples, to make it as accessible as possible. And you'll see actual code samples here on the right side if you're using, JavaScript, for example, if you're using Python. It's there somewhere. Yep. Yeah, we'll give you kind of a good starting point, that you can copy paste directly into your code, and start using our API in pretty much minutes. And I guess last thing I'll go over before turning over to Air. Well, last couple of things. So we did mention AI integrations. This is actually a fairly new addition to our API docs and kind of user guides. We've added a ton of AI features. There's actually ask drop downs on each of our API pages where you can just send this page in like a markdown format that AI tools typically understand better to your ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, whatever program you use to help it look through our guides and then help you ask questions, answer questions, whatever you have. And then we recently launched an MCP server. If you're not familiar, this is a modal context protocol server that basically provides like an abstraction layer around our API that makes it much easier for different AI agents to work with directly our API. So I know Ariel mentioned Cursor, popular, IDE programming environment. Once you add a small config file and we give you like step-by-step instructions on how to do this, put your API key so you can actually authenticate with our API. You can actually just have Cursor probably write your entire backend in terms of data pipeline and integration for you, right? Using our MCP server, or at least give you a testing environment where you can ask it directly, like, hey, can you, send me property record data or a value or a rent estimate for this property? It will actually use our MCP server to make a request to our API, and then return you the data for testing, development, probably maybe even production. So yeah, tons of AI tools, guides here, just kind of again to help a lot of the devs that may be struggling, or they're a one person shop, to get working with our API as fast as possible. We also have a ton of kind of no code or low code integration options available. One being Zapier, if you're familiar, it's kind of an automation building platform where if you're not building an app, maybe you're building a workflow, like you just need some property record data, rent comps, maybe value estimates to be put into Excel, or a CRM like Follow Up Boss, Google Sheets, HubSpot. Zapier would be like a perfect solution to that. We offer a native Zapier connector. So this is actually like an app published in Zapier. So you can use our app to connect to a bunch of other apps. We have some templates for you, and you can make these automations probably, in 30 minutes or so, and connect our data to other apps without any code. So there's Zapier, Make, N8N, sorry, and then a few CRM platforms, no code builders. Not sure how popular these are now. Everybody seems to be building with AI, but there's Bubble, Riplet, Lovable, and then obviously kind of dev tools, your standard Postman collection. If you're a Postman person like myself, you like that, you can just fork our Postman collection directly, provides you all access to the endpoints. There's an open API spec as well if you have kind of a tool that works on that and you'd like to import our API definition into that. But Ariel did a kind of a great set of tutorials in Python to get started with different endpoints. We provide like property record data, historical rent trends, value rent estimates, and she did a few both on Zapier as well as just kind of Python code. So that's also a good starting point. I believe they're still on her, they should be still on her YouTube channel that you can reference if you need some help getting started with that. So property record data, which includes sale transaction history, we do have it for non-disclosure states, but it will not have the actual sale prices, unfortunately, because those we do get from the public county records or recorded deeds. In a non-disclosure states, they obviously don't record the prices. So when you query our property records endpoint to retrieve like the sale history of a property, it will only have the sale date as well as kind of the other event details. For our listing data, this data is comparable to the MLS. We don't actually source it from the MLS. We source it from public sources like online listing websites, directories, other public record information that we consider, in the public domain. So this is a very popular data set that people use as kind of a proxy or a substitute for MLS data. Obviously, MLS data in the United States is very hard to get because you essentially need a brokerage or license for each county, each area that falls under the jurisdiction of an MLS. You go through that whole process, then integrate with an IDX feed or something like that to retrieve that data. And pluses and minuses with that approach. Obviously, you get all the MLS data, specifically the copyright protected information like images, video descriptions, listing descriptions to use in your product. The downside is it's an enormous cost to do this nationwide, and there's no guarantee that the MLS will give you permission to do what you want with this data. The way we acquire this data, we have a few data partnership agreements and other kind of responsible sources of this listing data. So the coverage is very comparable to the MLS. The caveat is we don't provide information like images, videos, or listing description that would specifically fall under the copyright of an MLS jurisdiction. So this allows us to offer this data publicly to pretty much all of our API users without a specific brokerage or MLS license at a very reasonable cost, with the downside being that it doesn't have images. That's like the most common ask is like, does your listing data have images? Now we have a lot of clients that's what they have done is they pretty much use our API for the listing data, for the search capabilities, and you get all the stuff like the status, the list price, the listing type, agent information. Then if you do need images, we typically recommend them use something like Google Street View API or Google Places API. So these would be the kind of, if you're familiar with like Google Street View, that the cars that drive by take photos of properties. This is a licensable photo, and there's typically one like taken off the street of the home, of the front of the home, that you can use combined with our listing data to at least like give you one image of the property or like a thumbnail or something like that. You can actually go to our API docs, click on the intro page like listings, and we always have a section called data sources and coverage that kind of goes over where the data comes from, how often it's updated. But I'll kind of briefly touch on that. Excuse me. So property record data, we do not source this from other vendors. This actually does come directly from county records, tax assessors, deeds recorded, tax assessor databases. So this is county source data that we've developed over many periods of time, many years internally. We typically scan for updates for this type of data about once every week, once every 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that there's any updates because this data tends to be somewhat, it doesn't modify as frequently. Only really when properties are sold or new tax assessment or property tax information is added. But we do check updates at least every 2 weeks for most counties in the United States against this data. Our property valuation data, so these are AVMs either for the home value or the home rent. These are actually calculated in real time. And we kind of have a lot of info in here that goes into our general methodology for this. But our AVMs are not cached. So at the time of your API request, we will actually recalculate the AVM based on available either sale or rental comparable data that we have in our database, and then return the AVM to you. And with that, also, our AVMs are very configurable, meaning you can actually like specify like the radius of comps, the age of comps, like the look back period, how many comps to use. So that's why we don't cache it, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to give our users the flexibility to like fine tune the AVM formula. And you can actually use our AVMs to like retrieve hypothetical property values, not just like actual property values. Meaning, like, well, for example, we have a lot of new construction and home builders that use this to estimate what a value of a home would be before the home is even built. So they can provide a lat long of the home instead of an actual address, which doesn't exist at that point. And they can provide like the property type, square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms to our AVM engine, and it will still look at comparable properties in that area and give you an estimate of what that home would be worth. So yeah, these are real time listing data. Again, I mentioned that we source it from kind of public sources like listing websites, online directories. This is updated daily, so there should never be more than a 12-hour, maybe max like 18-hour delay between when a listing is published or updated and when it's available via our API. And then our market trends. This is the kind of the aggregate sale and rental market statistics that I touched on. These essentially are taken like as a monthly snapshot at the end of each month. So the current month's data, the top level like average prices, days on market, those are updated daily for the current month. And then when the month is over, we save it in a historical snapshot under this history array. That's a big JSON here, yeah. But so we'll kind of save it at monthly periodicity. So then our market trends, they go back several years into the past. They'll be available at monthly intervals. But yeah, if you have kind of like detailed questions, our API docs have a bit more information.
Awesome. Yeah, market data was one of my favorite endpoints. When I was first looking like where to invest within like the greater Tampa area, I was looking at specific zip codes using this endpoint and then seeing historically how has rent like trended. And for those
Yep.
that were starting to see like a spike is where I thought like, oh, that could be a lot of promise.
Yeah, it could be like gentrifying areas or kind of
Exactly.
a lot of activity there.
Yeah. Cool. So we have another question here. So do you have any land data? It looks like from property records there is land data. Maybe you could touch on how comprehensive it is and maybe what features it has.
Yep. So we do have land data. So actually, we have a property types like definition page in our docs. We provide data on single family homes, condos, townhouse, manufactured, small multifamily, 2 to 4 units, larger multifamily apartments. So this would be the commercial side of things. We only provide data basically for residential commercial property. So these would be apartment complexes, condo complexes. We currently do not provide data for like industrial, medical, like basically like commercial spaces that don't have people living in it. We also have land data. So this technically includes pretty much all of our data sets. So we'll have property record land data, AVMs, property value estimates for land data, property listings. If a land is listed for sale, we should have its data. I would say our coverage for land, just to be fully transparent, is much better in more urban areas and with kind of residential lots. So these may be like smaller lots, a zone for like a home to be built on or a multifamily. Once you get into kind of the rural, like really rural areas, as well as kind of much larger land properties, we typically like our coverage may drop from maybe like 90% to like 70 or 60%, just because a lot of those, there's only a few sources of those listings for those land parcels. A lot of times they're not listed on common websites that we scan. So it's hard for us to acquire that data, and it's just kind of the use for it and the demand is not as high. So we don't have as much focus on it. So I would say if you're interested in kind of more residential land, more urban land, should be fairly high coverage, and our various endpoints should work well. You can still try to use it for more like if you're trying to buy half a forest or something, like a logging operation, like would be an example. Maybe there's like 200 acres for sale in the middle of Montana. We're gonna have data on it. Probably not, or maybe we'll have like just the sale listing, snapshot of it. We probably will not be able to like even provide an accurate AVM for it, just for full transparency, because the amount of comps we have for something like that would be very low. I would say if you ever find a data point or like a data, set that you're like, hey, I don't think you guys have it, but it'd be cool if you have it. We have a great support team. So if you actually hit this blue chat button at the bottom right, that'll go straight to our tech support. These are all US based agents. We don't outsource this. They're also very knowledgeable about our API platform, so they can answer questions ranging from billing to account management to like very specific, like, hey, I'm trying to, construct this very complex query and it's not working. They can look into that. But also, they're happy to receive any feedback you have. The way we operate, and we have for years, is we catalog and log all of the feedback and kind of prioritize it based on how many users requested and the top suggested features or data points that our users want. That's what makes it into our roadmap, as much as we can obviously accommodate it. So yeah, I absolutely encourage everybody, if you're using our platform, to send us your feedback. Obviously, we can't guarantee that we'll add it like next month, or even maybe this quarter, just because we have resource constraints. But we will definitely log it, discuss it, like it's not going to be forgotten. As far as our bread and butter, I honestly cannot say that like we spend more time on one data set than the other. So our core four offerings are property records, property AVMs, listings, and market trends. All of those receive equal attention from our team, and our data engineers. So like none of them are like forgotten. Like, we can't say like, oh, property record is like a back burner for us. No, like we spend a lot of time, various times of the year working on these data sets. So we did start, like Ariel mentioned, originally. I think we just had one endpoint actually. It was the rent estimate. And we just provided rent estimates and rental comps. And over time we expanded our data sets. So all of the data sets you see, these are not like, half baked or anything like that. These are full-fledged production ready, quality data sets that are widely used. We actually have a pretty even distribution among our 5,000 plus users as far as what data they use. All of these are very popular for different use cases. Property record data is fairly quantitative and like, as a matter of fact, right? All of these data fields, that there's really nothing to process. These are your structural attributes. These are your sale information. These are your property features, tax assessments. Like I wouldn't even know what to ask AI about this data, because it just coming from county records, and you're welcome to verify it against county records if you'd like. The same with kind of listings, property listings. Whatever listing information is published, that's kind of what we'll display. Are the two data sets that maybe are a little less more ambiguous, I would say, are maybe AVMs. So our AVMs do use some AI, but it's more like it's a bit older, so it's more like machine learning, and kind of complex like arithmetic formulas to calculate AVMs. And in terms of accuracy, we do provide some statistics, so you can reach out to our support team. We have these like price range low and price range high fields that kind of give you a sense of the confidence score in our value and rent estimates. So instead of providing like an arbitrary rating, do we think this like AVM is like 8 out of 10 or something like that? We actually give you a distribution range that you can then use to calculate your own statistical accuracy scores, if you would like to do that on our AVMs. So this will be an endpoint that kind of maybe in the future will be using AI a bit more for this, but it would only be in terms of like helping us improve the AVM accuracy, right? So if we believe that AI will make a meaningful impact, if we kind of interject it in a few parts where AVMs are calculated, we might do that in the future. And then maybe the market statistics, some people have like questions like, well, how statistically accurate this? We're very transparent in terms of the formulas we use, and these are really just median and average formulas, right? So there's like min, max, average, median, if you actually look. So these are standard arithmetic, like there's no AI or kind of machine learning component. We do have some filtering for quality of data, meaning like if we find a rental listing that's like a house being listed for 100,000 per month, like that's probably not accurate. So we'll probably filter that out. So we do some kind of data quality cleanup and pre-processing before calculating the statistics. But then the actual statistical formulas are very simple. If you're building something with AI, and you'd like to make like investment decisions, kind of helping using AI to help you make investment decisions, analyze markets, or kind of using for more, I guess, derivative works, right? Not just displaying or working with raw data, but kind of making some assumptions or determinations based on the data. I would argue that if that's what you're building, you don't want pre-processed data because you don't know what pre-processing or AI augmentation was done on that data before you fed it into your AI model, right? So AIs, I mean, they're getting there, but they already have issues with them. So if you have data that's been processed one, two, three, at some point you're like, is my data integrity even there? So what we provide is high quality raw data essentially that you can use to feed into your AI models, and you can be fairly confident that this is actual like factual or raw information that is coming directly from the source, and it has not been like pre-processed and manipulated in any way because that potentially can skew your own analysis and modeling that you're doing. So we've had a big spike or large number of users that built some sort of like AI chatbot type program that's been really popular. So these I've seen used kind of in the brokerage realtor industry. So for brokers, realtors, I've seen a couple where they've built a chat bot that kind of an agent can put on their website, for example. Agents typically have listings, property listings on their website. So there was a company that kind of built a chat bot for them that they can install on their website, and then a user like a customer, so a person looking to buy or sell a home will come and start talking to the agent, the AI agent, and it can provide them more detailed home information beyond what is in the listing, right? So when you give kind of an AI chatbot access to our API and property data, they can ask questions, they can answer questions like what is the home potentially worth? Then the person can compare to what it's selling for, what can it rent for, what it was last sold for, what have the market trends, progressed like in the area. So that's been a big kind of client segment, I would say, for AI chatbot specifically. I have seen a few other kind of competing applications that focus specifically on investment property analysis acquisition. And that's AI assisted, meaning it's more of a conversational process where AI can help you, analyze your financing strategies or suggest maybe a different rehab budget or acquisition kind of scenarios. So they're a kind of AI enabled, and obviously they use our property data under the hood as well for value estimates, rent estimates, comps, property record data. So quite a few, and I'm very happy that we kind of launched our AI tools like MCP server that really sped up a lot of the developments. So we plan to obviously expand on this, and if you find any opportunity for improvements, please let us know. We're always happy kind of to reduce the friction between the developers and using our data.